Good day, math learners! In this video, we will talk about the concept on the percentiles of the group data. What are percentiles? A percentile is another way of measuring relative position by partitioning a population or a list of observations into 100 equal parts. These values are denoted by p sub 1, p sub 2, p sub 3, up until p sub 99. And 1% of the data fall under the first percentile, 2% of the data fall under the second percentile, 3% of the data fall under the third percentile, and 99% of the data fall under the 99th percentile. It is the percentage of observations in its frequency distribution that are the same or lower than it. Percentiles are calculated for very large data. How do we compute the value of the percentiles of the group data? The formula for percentiles of the group data is given below, wherein R is equal to 1 for the first percentile, 2 for the second percentile, 3 for the third percentile, up until 99 for the 99th percentile. LBPC, lower boundary of the percentile class. Sigma F, summation of the frequencies. CFB, cumulative frequency of the lower class below the percentile class. FPC, frequency of the percentile class. And lastly, I, which is the class interval. Let us now consider our first example. The following are the heights in centimeters of 35 students. Our tasks are to construct a frequency distribution table and to find P sub 35. Since we are using the same data that we had in the previous discussions, this is now the frequency distribution table of our data. So you also have to make sure that we have this first column. We have the class limits. Then the class boundaries on the second column. Then the third column would be the tally. Fourth column, the frequency. And the fifth column will be for the less than cumulative frequency. Since we already have our frequency distribution table, this time we will now solve for our P sub 35. So we will now find the values of the following, and then we will substitute them in the formula for P sub 35. So how to solve for the 35th percentile? So we will have to find first the percentile class of P sub 35 by using this formula. We have R times summation of F divided by 100. So this time our R is equal to 35 for P sub 35 and our summation of F is equal to 35. Substitute the given values to our formula and our P sub 35 class is equal to 12.25. Locate this value from our less than cumulative frequency column and we will highlight the entire row on where it belongs. So we have here our P sub 35, which is equal to 12.25. So we will now locate 12.25 from our less than cumulative frequency column. So since our data is all about the heights of 35 students, so from this column, it talks about students. So on the first class, we have students 1 to 2. On the second class, we have students 3 to 6. On the next class, we have students 7 to 15. On the next class, we have students 16 to 27, followed by students 28 to 34, and lastly, student 35. So in this case, 12.25 is under the third row. So we will highlight that entire row and label that one as P sub 35 class. Then we will now identify our lower boundary, which is 129.5. Then we also have to identify our cumulative frequency below, which is equal to 6. And then our frequency of the percentile class, which is equal to 9. We have here the different values needed to solve for P sub 35. So using this formula of the percentiles of the group data, we will now substitute the given values. And then we have to simplify. Therefore, P sub 35 is equal to 132.97. Round off your final answer to 2 decimal places and make sure that this final answer should be within the percentile class of 130 to 134. After which, we have to interpret the result. This means that 35% of the students have heights less than or equal to 132.97 centimeters. Let us now have our second example. Find the 65th percentile of the data below. So our data is all about the scores of grade 10 students in their math test. So we have the following. We are given the following columns for the scores, class boundaries, frequency, and the less than cumulative frequency. So the summation of F of this given data is equal to 50. So in the next slide, we will now solve for the 65th percentile. To solve for our P sub 65, we will have to find the following values. So first, we have to find the value of our percentile class of P sub 65 by using this formula. Our R this time is equal to 65 since we are looking for the 65th percentile. And our summation of F is equal to 50. Substitute these values for our formula. And then simplify. Therefore, P sub 65 class is 32.5. And locate this one from our less than cumulative frequency column. And highlight the entire row on where it belongs. So we have here our P sub 65 class, which is equal to 32.5. So using this table here, our 32.5 can be located on our column on less than cumulative frequency. And this is under 37. So we have to highlight the entire row and label this one as P sub 65 class. Then we will now identify our lower boundary, which is 59.5. Our CF below is 24. And our frequency, which is equal to 13. Then our interval here is equal to 10. So how did we get 10? Again, there are two ways in finding the class interval. So you can count from 60 up to 69, or you can also find the difference between your limits. Like for example, suppose we want to use 70 minus 60, or you can also have 60 minus 50, still our answer is equal to 10. So our class interval here is equal to 10. We have here the different values needed to solve for P sub 65. So we will now substitute our given values to this formula, then simplify. Therefore, P sub 65 is equal to 66.04. Make sure that this final answer should be within the percentile class of 60 to 69. And then we have to interpret the result. This means that 65% of the students scored lower than or equal to 66.04. Let us now continue with our third example. The following table shows the weights in kilograms of 50 high school students. Find P sub 88 and interpret the result. So we have here the given table. So we have the first column as the weights in kilograms, and the second column will be our frequency. So in this table, as you have noticed, it is incomplete. So therefore, we need to supply the needed information so that we can solve for our P sub 88. We will now complete the table by adding the class boundaries and less than cumulative frequency columns. So this is now the complete frequency distribution table with the needed columns for us to solve the indicated percentile. So to find P sub 88, so we will now find the following values. So first, we have to find the percentile class of P sub 88 using this formula. So this time, our R is equal to 88 since we are looking for the 88th percentile. Our summation of F is equal to 50. Substitute the given values to our given formula, and then we have to simplify. Thus, P sub 88 class is equal to 44, and we will now locate this given value to our less than cumulative frequency column. Our P sub 88 class is equal to 44. So we will now locate this one from our table on the less than cumulative frequency column. And 44 is under 50. So we will now highlight that entire row and label this one as P88 class. Then we will now find the values of the lower boundary, which is 63.5, our CF below, which is equal to 43, and our frequency, which is equal to 7. Then our interval is equal to 3. We have here the needed values to solve for P sub 88 class. So we will now substitute these values to our given formula, after which we have to simplify. Thus, the value of P sub 88 is equal to 63.93. We have to make sure that this final answer should be within our percentile class of 64 to 66. And then we have to interpret the result. This means that 80% of the students have weights less than or equal to 63.93 kilograms. And this ends our lessons on the percentiles of the group data. Thank you and God bless us all.